Those of you who follow my channel know that I have a big issue with the government trying to enforce various types of laws and regulation to control pollution. I think there are bigger issues that need to be addressed and bigger questions that need to be answered before we jump on this bandwagon of reducing emissions and narrowing roads and widening pavements and increasing time that you spend stopped at a traffic light where they say you're discouraging people from using their cars. Now, the first thing is everyone keeps telling you, and I'm talking about the government, that we should have clean energy, and they tell you to use electricity instead of fuel, as in fossil fuel. My first question to all those people who follow this and those who promote this agenda is, can you guarantee that the electricity that's being produced is clean energy? They're using fossil fuel to produce electricity, at least in most of the UK, and in several other countries they're using nuclear power. We all know from the various reactors that have blown up in Japan and the Chernobyl thing that's been going on for decades, that when this clean energy nuclear reactor blows up, the area becomes uninhabitable for many, many decades, and we don't even know how long. The other thing is that the nuclear waste, where does it go? They bury it into the earth. What's the impact of that? So let's not fool ourselves by saying if we drive electric cars, everything is going to be great. Everything is not going to be great because there are bigger issues that are causing pollution, and it's not just the cars. But that's just an easy target. My point of view on this is, if you go back and look at how governments and rulers rule, it's divide and conquer. If you go and start picking on big or corporations who fund their political campaigns, they're not going to get any money, they'll probably lose their power. So the easiest thing to do is to target individuals. As an individual, you can't really have any say or power over the government. So they increase taxes on cars. So the government's actually doing all of this to just distract the attention from the real issues at hand. So they're not forced by their voters to address the real issues. So they tell you that the cars are polluting. Everyone looks at a car and it's an easy target. It's the divide and rule. So you have so many people, they're not in a group, they don't have power as a collective. So motorists, easy target. Corporations, not so easy because they have money and power and lawyers. So the pollution is not just created by cars and the emissions and the fossil fuel, it's created by a whole raft of things that the government is just trying to ignore, because that means dealing with big giants and big corporations which they can't go against. So let's start with all the big cities around the world. Now, all the big city centres have these financial centres where you have massive multi-story buildings and blocks. Everyone comes from all over the cities, the suburbs, even from other cities, to work in the city centre, in those buildings. That creates a lot of congestion, a lot of transport issues, and having worked in that particular sector of banks and large corporations for the last 20 years, and having worked in Canary Wharf and the City of London, it's very evident and very clear that perhaps 70% of those people working in those buildings and in those areas don't need to be there. The government can enforce certain rules and regulations and laws that prevent corporations from making these city centres so busy. So if you have staff that are working in technology, they're software developers or things, they should have a separate building in the suburbs somewhere. Most of these people that I talk to and have come across in the last 20 years of working in the industry, most of them live out in the suburbs. They don't live in London or the city centres. They commute for hours and hours to get to work. And they would love to have the ability to just drive to work or take a bus to work or even walk to work if those offices were located in an area that's outside of London. They could cycle there. The people who are cycling 30 miles each way to come to work in Canary Wharf, I know a few of them myself. And it's all because the government's not regulating these companies from putting their staff in the town centres. Now, if you think about the electricity consumption, the public transport issues, the costs of maintaining all of that, just because a few million people have to commute every morning and every afternoon to go to work and go home. If we cut out all of this, we would cut out a massive amount of pollution. The second thing is, all these people working in these buildings, 90% of them buy their lunches from the shops nearby. So yes, the businesses are making a lot of money there, but also causing a lot of pollution. If you go to any of these areas, have a look at a bin. You'll see someone who walks out of a building to the shop across the road, buys a sandwich, buys some salad or some food that is given to them in a disposable plastic, polystyrene or cardboard container. They take it back to the office or wherever they're going to eat. So that whole thing is about 10-15 minutes. They use that and they bin it. Same thing with bottles and things. So when you finish work, if you open any of the bins in the office or outside, you see they are full up to the brim with all this disposable materials that are just used for 10 minutes. I can understand if someone bought some food from a shop and then took it home and they didn't have anything to carry it in and they were given a disposable container. But having these done 3 times a day when you're sitting opposite the shop in a building, it's all caused by bringing everyone into the centre. And that the government can change, but would they? Would they go against giants like Facebook, Google, or one of the big banks? No, they won't, because they're too scared. So all of the BS that we get from the government telling us how to reduce pollution is not about anything else except they are covering their own backside. The government only appears to be doing something rather than actually doing something, because it keeps that facade and keeps the voters happy who are just stupid anyway. Then think about all these office buildings that are in the city centres. First of all, they're extremely expensive, the real estate, so the cost of that is high to the companies and everything associated with it. And then all those buildings need to be maintained, they need to be heated, they need to be cooled, they need to have lights and electricity. And if you drive to any of the city centres around Europe, you'll see that at night, in the middle of the night, all the buildings are fully lit. No one switches off the lights. And they have this thing about, health and safety in case someone's left in the office. They're motion sensors, they're all kinds of things. Some companies have introduced them, but there's no law that says you have to switch off the lights. So, where is that wastage being accounted for? But no, because those are business rates, so obviously those companies and organizations are paying vast amounts of money to the energy companies for using electricity and gas and all that. So as long as someone's pocket is being filled, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's not pollution. Another thing that really winds me up is this disposable lifestyle and this immediate gratification that companies like Amazon and so many other companies, eBay perhaps, but mostly Amazon, they do it. If you order something, you can have it delivered on the same day or the next day. Now that means there are tons and tons of delivery vehicles going around every city delivering things. So if I order, a toothbrush, I don't need it that urgently. If I need it that urgently, I can go down to the shop. So there should be weekly delivery slots where you know that all your deliveries are going to be combined and be delivered on one specific day. And if you're that desperate, either you have to pay over the odds or you have to go to a local shop to buy it. It shouldn't be that everything that you order just turns up. Sometimes I order 5 things and I have 5 different companies delivering those on the same day. Why can't this all be organized by the government by enforcing some regulation where everything is collected in one depot, and then they look at the address and say 20 deliveries going to this address, that's your designated day. You can either come and collect it or we will deliver it, whichever way. I mean, I think a few countries in Europe have that where they don't deliver everything every day. There are specific designated slots. I may be wrong, but I think someone mentioned there's some kind of process like that in Sweden. These things that are delivered to us through these packages, if you look at them, usually you get a big box of a big cardboard box which has wrapping papers and other stuff to fill to prevent things from moving, and then you have a tiny toothbrush inside it. Instead of the toothbrush just being wrapped in a piece of paper and posted, it comes in a box. Everything comes in a box. So no matter what you order from Amazon, I order most of my stuff from Amazon. I'm one of those people you can blame for this, but I'm part of the society and I'm not the only one. However, if I order cat food, dog food, toothbrushes, shaving stuff, anything that I ordered, it always comes in a box no matter what size. And very rarely, unless the whole order is placed in one go, that they'll put everything in one box, otherwise they come one after another. A lot of the stuff that we produce in Europe are wastage. The recyclable boxes and cups and things that we think are being recycled, they're put onto trucks from the cities, driven to the port, where big ships take them to China for recycling. Now, all of this fumes created by the ships, the fuel that they consume, the trucks that are taking this, they're all causing pollution. If we didn't have all these recyclable, disposable products, and we used metal and other things that we just use over and over again, cups from coffee shops and disposable takeaway boxes and things like that, instead of having a little lunchbox, taking your own cup, things like that. They don't need to be there, but they are, and no one regulates them or controls them. They just put tax on it. So if you want to have a carrier bag, you go to the supermarket and you have to pay 5 or 10 pence for it. They think that they're going to discourage people, but no one is being discouraged because people are in that habit. They should just ban it completely. If you don't have a choice, you will get to the supermarket and realize, I didn't bring a bag, I can't take my shopping. Next time you will remember. Otherwise, I'm a lazy one, I forget to take bags sometimes, and then I end up buying more. And I have so many recyclable bags, which are just way too many, but because it's not a habit and because it's not urgent, it's easy to forget. So the flights is another big pet hate of mine. There's so many flights, thousands and thousands of flights going all around the world. Where is the control on the pollution and the emissions from the plane? What about the fighter jets and the military exercises? A friend of mine who was a fighter jet pilot was looking at the emissions of his jet, and we were discussing this, and he calculated something, and I'm not sure if that was correct, but he said an hour of his jet flying was producing enough emissions that were equal to the whole lifetime of a car. So 1 hour of a fighter jet equals a lifetime of a car's emissions. Don't know if it's true, but I'm still certain that they don't have catalytic converters and other kinds of devices on the planes to reduce the pollution that they're creating. But it's okay because it's a cheap flight. If the government was so interested in reducing pollution, they would seriously look at reducing the cost of electricity and the cost of public transport like trains. At the moment, it's cheaper to take a flight to anywhere in Europe than to take a train. Same thing in the UK, from here to, go to Edinburgh, it's cheaper to fly than to take the train. The train runs on electricity, the plane runs on fossil fuel. Explain this to me. If the government's doing things to regulate it, why aren't they regulating these big companies? It's because they're scared of them. But individual public, average Joe, they're not scared because the average Joe can't do anything except not vote for them, but people are stupid. In London, they have divided the roads and put cycle lanes and made the footpaths really wide. So it's where you had 2 lanes for cars, now there's 1 lane and a cycle lane, and then a massive footpath. In most other countries, they've divided the footpath and put a cycle lane on it and left the roads as they are. But the Labour government, Ken Livingstone, the great mayor that everyone voted for, destroyed London. He put these massive pavements, which are always empty because one, the weather doesn't allow it, and distances are too great. So people are not going to walk everywhere. It's impossible. It's a very big city. And the other thing is that increasing time at the traffic light doesn't really stop people from driving. Does it help with pollution? No, it increases pollution. All these buses, double-decker buses going around London, they are everywhere and they are 24/7, and if you go anywhere you'll see one after another, and most of them are empty. Why can't they be clever enough to say we'll have double-decker buses going around in peak hours and we're going to space them because you have GPS and all kinds of navigation systems that can monitor the distance between buses and space them, so they're not 6 buses turning up at the same time, and when it's off-peak, have smaller buses that are more eco-friendly going around rather than these big double-deckers that are burning fuel like hell. But no one really cares because no one really wants to fix the issue. If you have ever travelled in London during peak hours, you will know that it's impossible to even stand. And this is when you have all this public transport that the government says you should use more, and you have roads. If you took away all the traffic and said everyone use public transport, it's going to collapse. And it's not, even now it's not sustainable, so I don't know what people are thinking and the government's talking about because it's impossible. The only solution is to break these city centres and force companies to move their staff out. You won't have millions of people coming into central London. They'll be going and working in suburbs, in their neighbourhoods, in the areas where they are. Local businesses in those areas will flourish instead of big companies putting all their money into the city centres to have all these restaurants and bakeries and cafes and things. Individual businesses can't survive in the city centres because they can't afford the rates. So I'm afraid we're living in a big scam and we just keep accepting it. Okay, so that's my little rant about pollution. I do believe, I'm not one of those people who thinks that there's no pollution. I do believe that there is pollution, but unless India, China, America, and many of the other countries change their lifestyles and there is a general regulation around the world, we're all doomed. We're sharing the same water, we're sharing the same air and atmosphere, so whatever these countries are doing is impacting us. So in the UK, which is a tiny little island, we can jump up and down and make it the cleanest place on the planet and the most green and the most environmentally friendly. Doesn't make any difference. If the whole of the rest of the planet is dying around us, we're not going to survive. We're breathing the same air. So I hope this is of some use and it can give you an idea of why I think pollution is a big political scam rather than a real issue. Because if it was a real issue, it would be tackled correctly and addressed. But no, it's not. It's just about getting votes and getting stupid people to believe